Good evening. My name is Jack Souza. Prospect Theater Project is proud to bring a new event series to our community, Prospectus, a live arts forum. Prospectus is intended to give our patrons and our fellow performing artists a chance to interact with speakers from various fields of performing arts. Our first forum looks into writing for the theater and film. Our panel features Jeanette Harkins, Nick Zagoni, Ken White, Paul Ragsdale, and Arnold Anthony Schmidt. And I want to let you know now that our audience members, our viewers, are invited to participate in a Q&A along with us via Facebook or Vimeo, depending on where you are watching. I want to begin by introducing you to our panelists. Q&A along with us, and beginning with Jeanette Farr. Jeanette is a playwright and actress originally from Turlock, California. She's a graduate of California State University Stanislaus and holds an MFA in theater arts with an emphasis in playwriting from the University of Nevada, Las Vegas. Her plays have been produced around the world, including the Edinburgh Fringe Festival in Scotland. The work has been recognized by the Nevada Arts Council, the Kennedy Center American College Theater Festival, and the Association for Theater and Higher Education. Her plays are being performed at high schools, forensics competitions, community and professional theaters across the United States and abroad. She's an alumnus of the Kennedy Center Summer Playwriting Intensive. Jeanette is a proud member of the Antaeus Playwrights Lab, the Playwrights Union, and the Dramatists Guild of America.
Thanks for having me.
Pardon me, Jeanette?
Thanks for having me.
It's a pleasure. I'm delighted to have you here. It's been so long since I've seen you.
Yes.
Paul Ragsdale was born in Patterson, California, raised here in Modesto. Paul started writing and making his own short horror films at the age of 13. After graduating from Thomas Downey High, he took film production classes at the Modesto Junior College. In 2010, he formed A&P Productions with his wife, Angelica D'Alba. And since then, the filmmaking duo have written, directed, and produced 5 feature films featuring talent from the Central Valley. They are currently prepping the release of their latest film, Slasherette Party, an homage to the 80s Cabin in the Woods slasher movies.
Thanks for having me.
Good to see you. Happy you're here, Paul.
Thank you.
Arnold Anthony Schmidt's most recent work, Silence is Golden, is a romantic comedy set in the silent film era and is co-written with another of our panelists, Ken White. In 2016, the Turlock Lightbox Theater for Youth produced Super Cilantro Girl, a play based on the works of U.S. Poet Laureate Juan Felipe Herrera. The one-act comedy Ghost of a Chance or Prometheus Unbound was first performed in an evening of short plays at Modesto's Prospect Theater Project, and it appears in the 2020 volume of Penumbra Literary Magazine. His film credits include serving as assistant producer on The Silence, an American Film Institute production nominated for a 1983 Academy Award for Best Short Dramatic Film, and writing a screenplay for the 1984 Cannon Films feature Deja Vu. Arnold also wrote a 1988 screenplay for The Junkie Priest, a film based on the best-selling life story of Father Daniel Egan. In television, he wrote the story for the Tommy's Lost Weekend episode of the Warner Brothers sitcom Alice, nominated for a 1985 Emmy Award and awarded a 1986 letter of commendation from Los Angeles County for its treatment of teenage alcoholism. Glad to have you here, Arnold.
Happy to be here. Proud to be with a good group.
Ken White, our next panelist, retired from the worlds of advertising, corporate communications, and interactive entertainment to concentrate on writing and community service. He received his AA degree from Modesto Junior College, his BA and teaching credentials at UC Davis, and his MA at San Francisco State University. He's taught mass communication and film appreciation at the Modesto Junior College. He's written novels, screenplays, short stories, stage plays, children's and nonfiction books. Most of his stories are about his hometown connection with these stories. Ken's a prolific writer whose play Migrant Mother has been produced twice at Prospect Theater Project. A play so nice, we wanted to do it twice. Hi, Ken.
Good to be here.
And last but not least, only because his name ends in a Z, Nick Zagoni, who is an Oregon Book Award nominee. Nick has a Bachelor of Theater from Willamette University and a Master of Fine Arts in Playwriting from the University of Nevada, Las Vegas. Recently, his short film, The Gas Station, was on the 2017 shortlist for Best Short Film at the Cannes Film Festival. And his adaptation of Treasure Island was commissioned and produced at Merced College in California. He is also the resident playwright at Prospect Theater Project. Nick's screenwriting credits include the short films The Gas Mart Attendant, The Gas Station, Brainstorm, and the feature Ricky is Famous. Currently, he's working on turning his award-winning play David and Goliath in America, a William Kunstler story, into a screenplay. Nick's 10-minute plays have been seen in nearly all 50 states, as well as England, Scotland, Ireland, Canada, Australia, Tasmania, Germany, Poland, Chile, India, the Virgin Islands. It's like opening an atlas. Nick's a proud founding member of the Open Circle Theater in Seattle, Washington. He also has been recognized by the American College Theater Festival, the Association of Theater and Higher Education, and the Seattle School for Interagency Arts. So, you know, what a stellar group of people to get together here. I'm just delighted to have you all. I suppose, you know, the place to begin is, where did you folks begin? But Paul, I'm gonna start with you if you don't mind.
Yes.
You began working on your first film at 13.
Right.
What brought you to film?
So 13, that's actually a little late. Actually, we started doing stuff when I was like 10 or so, but we were just making up stuff as we went along, you know. I didn't actually start writing things until like I was like 13, 14, 15, you know. So what made me want to do it, like I said, it's like watching horror movies as a kid. My mom was always showing me the old Wolfman, Frankenstein, Abbott Costello Meet Frankenstein type of movies. And I eventually graduated to like Friday the 13th and Halloween and those 80s horror movies. So I just started to kind of make those movies with my brother and my cousins. And it wasn't until I was around like 16, a teenager, when I started to take screenwriting seriously. Like I wanted to be like Quentin Tarantino, you know, after watching like Reservoir Dogs. And I think that's the movie that really made me look at filmmaking as something I could do relatively easy, not easy, but something that could be achievable. So it was like the movies of the 90s, like the indie movies of the 90s, I say like Quentin Tarantino, Robert Rodriguez, their movies made me want to be a filmmaker and a writer, director.
Yeah,
Specifically.
When you started, you were probably working with video, right?
Yes. Yeah. I actually shot on VHS as a kid,
Yeah.
borrowed my aunt's video camera. And then my parents bought me a high 8 video camera and make little movies with that. And then when we got into like MJC, they had like actual digital video. So it was like mini DV. So we started making movies on that. And then and now, you know, shooting on DSLR cameras and stuff. So I've kind of seen the evolution, start pretty, at least with videotape. I never shot on film, but with video, I definitely started from the bottom.
Super 8 count. I think my first films were Super 8.
That's awesome. That's amazing. I would love to shoot Super 8 still. That's cool. I would love to.
Ken, when did you, what drew you to this? I mean, I suppose media had always been a part of your vernacular, but
Yeah, well, for me too, it started pretty early. I started in elementary school at Garrison Elementary, where a friend of mine and I wrote a stage play about the Three Stooges. And
why haven't you showed me that?
Yeah,
You dig it out.
should come back. It was funny because back then I had a little more hair, and I was cast as Shemp originally, and then I got a crew cut, and I had to change to Curly Joe. But and then from there, I studied Reader's Theater at MJC. Then at UC Davis, I did instructional television. And then I did broadcast communication arts at San Francisco State, and then went into advertising and communications. And in all of those things, I was always writing, directing, and producing, whether it was an informational piece, an instructional piece, a promotional piece. So yeah, I've always been attracted to the motion image and to words. So from a pretty early age.
Yeah, well, it's hugely compelling. I think we all find it so. Jeanette? Do you mind?
Well, yeah. We all have our firsts, I guess. I mean, I can go way back until like being 6 and bringing people to the neighborhood to watch some creation that I made. I had some really great teachers too that introduced me to theater in both 3rd grade at Kroll Elementary School in Turlock. Shout out to Terry Blackley. Hi. We're Facebook friends now. It's really great to see all these folks who have influenced me and still now retired from teaching, but are influences for my storytelling. But I think where it started getting serious is in college, having that dilemma of, well, am I going to be a writer or am I going to be an actor? And could I find things that I thought suited me as an actor? And said, no, I don't see me on stage. How cocky that is. But how about I write for myself or for the people around me? And then that's where I think it really got serious, although I was always in denial that I was going to act more than write. And as fate had it, the acceptance to grad school turned that around for me.
Yeah.
So.
Were you writing, Jeanette, when we were acting together?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, even though there wasn't necessarily a senior thesis at Stanislaus, I said, this is what I want to do. So, no formal playwriting classes at the time, right. But through the English department, Dr. Phillips was one who was really influential in nurturing that creative writing for the theater, which was great. And of course, Jerry O'Donnell always said yes to whatever we would do when we wanted to put on a show. And so some of the earlier readings were when I was in undergrad.
Fascinating.
Yeah. Nick?
Yeah. Sorry, I was listening to everybody. My brother was in the USO, and he came back from the USO from Vietnam, post-Vietnam, and he started a theater company in Portland called Storefront Theater. So I grew up like going and seeing his shows, and it was fascinating. I mean, I sat there. I remember you have actually a question, I think, about what's the first thing that kind of ignited you. And I remember seeing Romulus Linney's Holy Ghosts.
Oh my God, yes.
Yeah, about snake charmers. And they had these snakes on stage, and they were going through all these, gesticulations and, flopping on the ground with these snakes and everything. And I was like, I don't know how old I was, maybe 10 or something. And that just blew my mind. So I knew kind of what I wanted to do. And my brother luckily kind of opened the door, for my parents to be like, okay, another one. Fine. All right. So I started, that's how I started getting into it. And then I started writing in high school, but I didn't think that was what I really wanted to do. I wanted to be an actor. But I started writing sketch comedy with a friend of mine in high school, and we did, and Tom Graff, God love him, the theater director at Jesuit High School, was an all boys Catholic high school, and he let us do this sketch comedy, which was just a bunch of Bloom County ripoffs. and Bloom County and Monty Python, and just totally ripped them off. But so I started writing, but in college, I really wanted to be an actor. And then I took a playwriting class the last semester of my senior year. And I realized, oh shit, this is what I want to do. So then I just started doing it in Portland and then in Seattle. And it kind of went on from there.
Fascinating. Arnold, do you mind telling us where this road started for you?
Yeah, it's, I mean, as a kid, I liked writing, certainly in high school and college, but I was really mostly interested in fiction and a little bit of poetry, but not much, mostly short fiction. And then I was working in LA, graduated college, was working in LA as a publicist for Coast Productions, a TV commercial producer. And I met a director there who I had bought a book and he wanted it adapted into a film. And so that was really my first, earn as you learn kind of thing. And then once that kind of went forward, I did, one thing opens up doors for another.
Yeah.
And I was able to I did a couple of spec scripts. I wrote a Cheers and things like that. And they weren't made, they were just made as writing samples and sent them around. And that's how I got the Alice. And then I had a friend who had just gotten a spot on writing for LA Law. And I said, man, how'd you do that? And he says, oh, I wrote a play. I said, oh man, I'm going to write a play. So I joined the group Repertory Theater. And, it's like kind of going through that, which was a great experience, and had a production done there as they did weekend workshops, which was fully staged. So really nice. And then, kind of did all of that. And then, kind of a hiatus. I went back to school. I started teaching. I did academic writing. And within the last 5 years or so, I really come back to creative writing, starting with Lightbox Theater and Super Cilantro Girl, a couple of projects with Ken, and just some other things that it's really been a lot of fun. I've done, I have to say, one of the things I've done that's a lot of fun are these, I did a 3-hour festival where you write for 3 hours. I did a 1-hour festival where you write for 1 hour, and I did a 24-hour festival. Wow. So those kinds of things are really fun. One was at Grass Valley Fringe, the 1-hour one. They send you a prompt by email. You have an hour to write. The actors have an hour to rehearse, and the director, and then it goes up 3 hours later. It's really amazing. So anyway, just a lot of fun.
So I'm kind of imagining, Nick, you've done that or some variation of that. And I'm kind of Jeanette, you've done that as well.
A film one and did a film one and a theater one.
Oh, really? Film sounds fun.
Yeah, that was that Ricky is Famous that was in my bio there. It was a 48-hour full-length film festival, and it was a riot. It was done with Jeff Good, who he wrote. Anyway, he was a filmmaker and a writer down in LA, and he decided to do that, and it went pretty well. It was a lot of fun.
Yeah, any type of writing prompts like that are always just fun workouts, I think, for a writer. Paula Vogel has one that has her bake-off with ingredients, and so I've played with that. I also teach in Los Angeles here at Glendale College. And so those types of exercises for our students are fantastic to get the creative juices flowing, but they're a hoot to participate in. And I don't know about any of the rest of the panelists, but working under pressure is kind of my MO. There's something about it where there's not a lot of fat in the writing because you're looking to be really succinct with that writing. So that's what makes it kind of fun, that time constraint.
So ingredients, you mean like the play has got to have X, Y, and Z components? It's got to...
Yeah, a 24-hour play festival that I participated in, there was a metal pipe, and it needed to take place in a warehouse, and rope. Those were my 3 ingredients. And of course, I go into probably where Paul goes into, being that Tarantino is one of my favorite filmmakers as well, that, it's going to be like Reservoir Dogs. But it turned out to be in an Amazon warehouse. And fulfillment center on Christmas Eve, and it's still one of my favorite plays, and it's gotten a little attention. So you never know where those ingredients will take you, or what's going on with what's there in your mind. But those kind of prompts, I think, are really fun and useful, and that sense of community where you get to pass along the script to other actors and collaborate in that microcosm.
Right. And you're all working on that same kind of tight deadline.
Yeah. Really a hoot.
Jen, have you ever done this?
No, never have. Arnold's tried to get me in on a couple of them, but
Arnold's trying to lure you into that.
yeah, I haven't done it. Yeah, I see that. I'm not one that responds to pressure. I like having the
Yeah, I like
time
that
to
planned out.
savor it.
Yeah.
I agree.
Paul, have you done this with film?
No, the 40-hour film festivals that we've had here in Modesto, I've never participated in those. That's way too much anxiety for me. I take too much time shooting. If anything, I shoot too much, and so yeah, those things would just be a disaster for me because
I
write
can't-
too much, shoot too much. No, can't do it.
Yeah, I don't know that I could. I'm too prone to anxiety. I think I would buckle.
Yeah.
I would just crumble.
Right. Yeah. I mean, totally. I totally see that, but a lot of people do. But I mean, a lot of people do turn it out. They're able to make these films in 48 hours, and I just like, why put that pressure on myself? I don't need to do that.
Wild
It's
ride.
one of those things
I'm
where
fine.
it's one of those things where I've seen the worst and I've seen the best.
Oh yes.
You know, seen
Right.
the absolute, even with like the playwriting ones, you know, you'll see some, oh my God, but then you'll see like some of the best things you've ever seen. It's
Oh yeah.
it's odd.
Yeah, it just brings back bad memories of being in film class at MJC when you have a deadline and you haven't shot anything yet, so you have to shoot in 48 hours and edit all night. So I'm like, nah, I don't want to do that no more. I'm not in school no more. I'm fine. I only miss Mingus breathing down my neck.
Editing has become a kind of a surprise component of trying to produce theater, which was like a big surprise, right? I mean, the typical theater process, you know, that editing is happening all along, and it's not that formal process that it is for film. It's been kind of surprising the couple of forays we've made into you know, streaming theater projects.
Oh yeah, you did that one with the Runnels recently, right?
Yeah, we did an Iliad.
Yeah.
And you know, we'd actually kind of learned a little bit then that, you know, it takes weeks.
Yeah.
You know, it was a few days to shoot everything really, but you know, weeks after to assemble it in a way that makes sense.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
So yeah, I look back at my life from my perspective, you know, now as you know, as an old man, and I see some of those things in my childhood that really, you know, now I understand were things that set me on the path I found myself on. I'm kind of wondering, you know, is there a story? Is there a story from any of your childhood that expresses who you are as a writer today?
Oh wow.
Jeanette?
I'll jump in. I know, no, you know, that's a really vulnerable question, but I think that there's a lot of value in that. And what's on my mind right now is sadly the passing of the wonderful and great Cloris Leachman. And this will date me, but being a latchkey kid and watching television situation comedies and really getting that rhythm and that format in. So I mentioned Cloris Leachman and watching the Mary Tyler Moore Show and Betty White's timing and Carol Burnett. And she's huge influence, Carol Burnett. I can't wait to meet her someday. So that even though through that screen or whatever our favorite movie moments were where our hearts skipped a beat,
Yeah.
but that was a place of escape and a place of solace and comfort. And when you go in the movie, you could lose yourself in that movie, much like, you know, when we watch that's why it still exists, I think. That we have so much media content right now, and yay for all the artists who are creating it. I think that's really undervalued. We just assume that it's going to be there, except the ones who are actually producing it and doing it. We kind of forget that it is so vital to our moods and our well-beings. And so even though I haven't fully, theater is where my community is, to write for television has always been that dream, to be that showrunner, to write that pilot that then gets picked up and see what can happen has always been really hopefully my second phase in my life, because it's always been there from the beginning.
From the beginning. Yeah, I want to pitch an idea for you. I think it'd be a great
Let's talk. I'll have your people talk to my people.
Yeah, it'll be about a small theater company in a Central Valley town during a pandemic. And
hey, I know those people well, so I'd be happy to write about them.
Anyone else want to pick that up?
Well, I'll jump in.
Do,
so when I was 12, I got a ruptured spleen, and I nearly died. I lost, I don't know, 2 pints of blood in my stomach. But I got to the hospital in time and the spleen was removed. But almost 50 plus years later, it became the centerpiece for a novel that I wrote called Getaway Day. And it has to do with baseball, family, friends, community. And it was all around that one event that happened to me when I was 12 years old. And pretty much everything I write has those same themes. My writing's about Modesto.
Yeah.
It's about family. It's about friends. It's about community. So yeah, for me that was, and it's one that obviously marked my life. And like I say, it took 50 years to finally express it in some way, but I did, and I was very happy with the way it turned out.
I think it was Tyrone Guthrie who said that, for a work of art to be truly universal, it has to be rooted in those places and people that are most specifically your own. If you set out to write something that will be understood and embraced by everybody, you're really probably doomed to fail. But when you write about, your specific context, you can better reach the world.
Yeah, I agree with that as well.
They talk about writing what you know, and I know that that's a cliche, but it's writing what you know and then making it universal. Mm-hmm. And you're writing from a place that you know and people you know, and then you take it out beyond that.
Yeah. So a number of you kind of dabble in, have a foot in both screenwriting and in playwriting. I think I have a sense of what the answer, what that difference is, but what is different about the two endeavors, writing for stage and writing for film?
I think it's fascinating that they're getting, they're understanding how well playwrights, or the industry is understanding how well playwrights understand structure. And although I don't think ever in a pitch meeting that I would say, well, this is Aristotelian and kind of or make a theater reference or a playwriting reference, but there is something to a structure that is kind of inherent in us as humans. So there is a difference, but yet I think there's a lot of folks in the room who are providing really valuable insight into storytelling. A lot has to do with format. A lot has to do with maybe through the lens of who's telling that story. So if it's, a lot more,
it seems like film
description.
Mm-hmm. It seems like film structure might really emerge later in the process, but structure's got to be presence at the very outset in
Structure and characterization, really understanding the backstory of characters, I think is even though it may not all appear on the page, it's just that theater, to me, theater or plays have a longer time to work on that structure. That's why I think that the forms of the television forms right now are using that episodic structure to really develop character as it goes. I find that to be really fascinating right now.
Yeah, but Jeanette, they're breaking the rules with that. That is
right. It hasn't always been that,
and it's good rule breaking stuff. You can break them now and still get something produced. The thing is, for years there was so many rules to it, and I'm sure Paul would back me up. I mean, at page 2 you had to hit this. At page 10 you got to hit this. You got to hit this mark. You got to hit the end of Act 1 by at least page 15, right? I mean, you got to hit
going on today.
Marks. Yeah. And it's so important to hit those marks because everybody in the business knows those marks. But and then TV has changed that. You don't have to hit those marks so much anymore. But I remember taking, even at UNLV, Jeanette, with,
Sean.
Sean Clark. And also, I can't remember, but they'd say, page 2 is your first commercial. Page 10 is your other commercial. And playwriting, the thing I like about playwriting, I think to go back to your question, Jack, is that the thing I like about playwriting is no rules. Do what you want. I mean, you really can. You can hit Act 1, at page 50, and that's okay. Up until recently, you had to hit marks with screenwriting.
Yeah.
Well, I think that there are some expectations, though, still. I mean, and speaking as a woman on the panel, that not all structures where rules are broken, like something without a rising action and climactic moment, a high point of suspense, is really accepted. In other words, without that, sometimes your play won't get done at a theater, depending who is at the leadership level of that. So it's odd. There's still an expectation, although I would agree that there's a lot that's being played with. And if anybody is interested in, say, writing a spec, which is on speculation, is why do you analyze? Why do you like what you like? Right now, Big Little Lies, love that show. Like trying to find out what's going to happen in next season. Like my brain's going, I need to write a spec for that, just because I'm so curious about the characters. But you can kind of tell who's running that show and how their individual structure is. That's going to be different from something like Glow or The Handmaid's Tale or
what's great about TV, though, like you said, is TV is about the writer. Film is about the director. And that's still kind of the difference today. And Jeanette, what you said about character is true. I think character is if you can flush out character and that needs to be flushed out more sometimes in film. And I think playwrights know how to do that. Mm-hmm. I think you're right.
Well, for me, it's an aesthetic thing. It's a live audience versus a canned product. And it's the fact that you can do more things with film than you can with theater. Theater, you're in a confined space. But I like the challenge that creating for that confined space allows you. And so, yeah, for me, those are two of the major differences.
I would certainly agree with the point that Nick is making about this kind of freedom from structure and how in plays you really have a lot of freedom. I certainly, in terms of screenwriting, focusing on a character and character arcs and things like that. And to some extent, I don't want to say being trapped by it, but I would say one of the weaknesses that I feel I have as a playwright is I still like stories that I like the O. Henry twist. I like things that resolve. And in playwriting, I think there's a different kind of ambiguity than even there would be in like independent films or foreign films. And I think one big difference is like the use of metaphor. That for me, sometimes when plays are successful, it's a metaphor for something, whether it's a combination of the way the words are working and and it's staged. In other words, the role of the director, the set designer, the actors, there's something metaphorical about it that for me is different than the way that might work in a screenplay where I can put stuff in there, but you know, it just feels like it's still controlled by structure and by, I don't want to say linearity, but even linearity, like in a Tarantino film that goes back and forward in time, it's still kind of linear. Whereas in plays, you know, you could really do crazy stuff. And I think that idea of metaphors is really interesting to me.
Well, the other one last comment on that is that with this play, you have perhaps more control and more opportunities to have your work seen. I mean, films, who knows? But a stage play, we're lucky. We have the Prospect Theater Project. They've done, you know, a couple of ours, and it's great having that opportunity to do something and have it seen. A lot harder in film.
I do really miss the well, I think we all do. We miss that live theater interaction and sitting in the audience and hearing whether or not a joke lands with an audience in real time. So really looking forward to getting back to that.
Of course. Amen. Yeah, that's a fact. So I think I've you know, I've in my heart, I've always wished I was a writer, but I think the simple reality is that I am wholly undisciplined. And I am kind of curious about the discipline of writing. I mean, you guys, I'm sure that there's not a single cohesive answer. Do you try and write for a certain amount of time each day? You know, I'm going to sit down and I'm going to write 10 pages today, or I'm going to write a scene today, or do you only write when you feel, the impulse, when you feel the urge to write?
Well, I'll kick it off. So I was self-employed for most of my life. So I had to be productive. I had to get things done to make any money. But for me, I work every day. I'm up at 6 and I write until noon, take a break, and then I'll go do maybe meetings or do some marketing in the afternoon. But I'm every day, except Saturdays and Sundays. And even then I might be doing some research or some marketing or something. But for me, it's every day, and it's at least 6 hours in the morning, writing something new, rewriting something, researching the next project. I mean, and to wait for inspiration to strike, the people who say, get my glass of scotch and my whatever and sit down and start writing, that never worked for me. I had to put the time in.
And I would say also, it really depends on what you mean by writing. And I think Ken is kind of alluding to this. In other words, if you have, a project that you're researching, an idea that you're thinking of, an actual project that you've written, another project that you're editing. In other words, I just feel like, what am I in the mood to do? And I think that really kind of helps, because if you're in the mood to read, then you research something. And if you're in the mood to write, or rewrite, or you're stuck. So that idea of the writer's block never really comes up, because there's always something else to do. And I think this also really insulates you as much as it's possible from rejection, because you send out dozens of things and either either they get rejected or they just disappear and you never hear from them again. And I think if you're thinking, oh, I wrote this one thing and my whole life depends on it, but if you've got a lot of stuff, you're writing stuff, you send it out, some of it hits, some of it doesn't. But I think that takes the pressure off so many words a day or thinking like that, because sometimes you need to just get on a bike ride and think about your characters, and then that's writing, because you'll come home and in a half hour write more than if you just stuck yourself in front of a computer and tried to chain yourself down and write.
Yeah, I agree. I look, man, writing's hard. So sometimes you just don't feel like doing it, after working, but if you're always thinking about it, I count that,
Yeah.
If you're always thinking about the character, thinking about a turn or a motivation or something like that, even if I'm not physically writing something, which I do write, by hand a lot, but then to sit down and do it on the actual computer, those days are not as frequent. Like I think just the other day I sat down, wrote 10 pages of a script, and that felt really good after writing on my outline for like 6 months. So it's a very long process, writing by hand too.
So writing is not, just sitting down at the keyboard and writing. It's processing, researching. It's doing a
Definitely.
lot of work.
I think I think for a play though, I've been writing them long enough to know if the visceral intent isn't there, if it, I mean, and you know this, Jack, there's scripts that just have blood, sweat, and tears on it.
Right.
And those come in short bursts, except for maybe O'Neill. He has these long bursts, where he can write, I just think the best stuff I've written has been in like a week, just powering it out, because that's how I felt that particular time. I wish I was a novelist and could, kind of write, I totally can. I am so jealous of you to do that every day. I wish
amazing.
I could do that, but I know for a play, it doesn't work for me. That doesn't work. It has to feel like this. What is it? Hemingway said it. I write when I have something to say, and I think it's almost the same thing. A play needs to be in a really short, blasting burst of energy, and it's done, and you're sweat, and you have a drink, and it's done. I've really felt that way, and it's really been like a week, maybe 2 weeks. And sometimes that'll happen once every 2 years.
Yeah, lightning in a bottle.
Huh?
Lightning in a bottle.
Yeah, it is. I think, I don't know. Jeanette, am I crazy? I think.
Well, yes, but not about that. No, I think you're definitely onto something. My process is incubation, but those ideas can be fleeting. So an idea that you had, if you don't jump on it, or at least, I've got a number of composition books, and I kind of devote each play to each composition books. And one may have only one page down, and it's like, oh, I'll never come back to that idea. But sometimes it'll be a line, sometimes it'll be a character. And the best thing for me is to be surrounded, and I think this is also one of your questions, Jack, but surrounded by other writers who make you better writers, because and it's not a competitive thing necessarily, but watching plays, reading plays, going out and seeing theater, absorbing all that you can in storytelling, reading, all of those things contribute to getting the brain to think about what's within us to then put down on paper. And sometimes I'll get an idea and I go, that's not mine to write. Or it's not time for me to write that yet.
Yeah.
Or, and then it kind of then it's somebody else's, and that's okay. So yeah, I always used to worry that or I would get kind of miffed. Oh, wow, they came up with my idea. Well, everybody has similar ideas. I mean, heck, plays are about family. Plays are about the human condition. I'm sorry, we're all humans. We all have beating hearts. So, jump on it. If it feels right to you, then jump on it. I personally do not write every day, but that incubation is really important. Got a couple of projects, a couple of unfinished pieces, but the ones that do get finished usually are through the support of wonderful theater companies who are like, hey, we'd love to read your first 20 pages in with a group of our actors. Or Antius Theater Company has been really kind to me here in Los Angeles, where we have a lab setting. We bring in 20 pages and hear it read by wonderfully trained actors who make our words sound wonderful. And then we get feedback from fellow writers. To me, it's that community that keeps me up on my game and pushing forward. Yeah. And it's not for the compliments, it's just the interaction.
Right. Yeah.
It's bumping up against other people, because to me, that's theater, that collaboration. is what ignites it.
Well, it is hugely collaborative, at every level. So, what do you do when you felt that spark and that's gotten you started in a project? That's gotten you moving forward on something, but what do you do with those times where you come up against something and you just can't make that next leap? You can't write that next sentence.
Well,
What do you do?
Well, for playwriting, I think you can power through it. But for film, I won't even start it until I have that climax or turn. Because as sure as Paul knows, everybody's got a pitch. But everyone pitches me, I go, okay, then what happens? And
Gotta be ready.
most people don't know what happens after. They got the pitch,
Mhm.
but the turn and the climax are so important. And I won't sit down to write film until I know what that turn is. And that's what keeps me, because I know I'll sit down and write the pitch and then it gets to page 30 and like, okay, I don't know what to do. So you got to have that climax and turn first for me.
The turn is that thing that makes you see everything that's happened up to that moment differently. You understand it differently.
Yeah, Bruce Willis is a ghost.
Right.
Spoiler.
That moment. For me, I got to have that good turn before I start. For film, for playwriting, you can kind of power through it.
Yeah.
Has anyone ever seen the movie Barton Fink?
Oh yeah.
Someday, playwright trying to write for Hollywood and he just can't do it. He's trying to write a wrestling movie and he just has extreme writer's block. Some days are just like that. You just look at the typewriter, or not typewriter, but computer screen, and you just got nothing. You need to get out and go do something. But it does, like Nick was saying, if you know where you're going, if you know the ending, or the turn, definitely helps. I always try to do an outline before I start writing, but I can't just write and just let it flow and just let it go, like the way other writers claim they do. I don't know, I can't do that. But a lot of days, it feels like Barton Fink. You're just alone in a room and empty, staring at the empty screen and just can't write anything.
And then the whole place is on fire.
Yeah, and John Goodman next door yelling at you and screaming, bringing you a severed head in a box. Spoilers.
Certainly, I think, as when you start out as a writer, I think there is that idea, the mythos of you just sit down and it just comes.
Yeah.
And I certainly wrote myself into a corner quite a lot doing that. And I have to say, once I got myself, more organized, I'm a really big believer in outlining, super outlining. And also I spend a huge amount of time writing character biographies and character profiles. I want to, if I know those characters really, really well, like you should know whether your character drinks coffee, black or with, two, cream and 2 sugars. You should know everything about them, their religion, their ideology. You really, you're not going to use it all. But what I find is if I know them enough, and I don't mean it, this sounds really silly, but if they're in a situation, I know they're going to do one thing and I know they're not going to do another. It's like, oh, this comes up. Oh, she would never say that. He would never do this. And I think that sometimes we start, and I think this point Nick is raising, is that we start too soon. We don't incubate enough, as Jeanette points out. If we really write those biographies, and I heard an interview with Tarantino, and he's saying he wrote a 78-page biography of just the characters, and it's like, right. That's the way to go. And he knows those people. Then when they get in a room and something happens, I don't want to say they say their own lines, but how they're going to act.
There's almost a channeling. It's almost as if it's really effortless. They start speaking to you.
Exactly.
And it's pretty amazing when that happens, because then you get surprised by what's...
As Nick says, suddenly you write those 10 pages and they're fantastic. And it's a burst, but it's a burst that took, all that other effort to get you going for that burst.
Yes, definitely. I definitely agree with that. Once you know your character's point of view, there's not an unlimited number of possibilities of decisions they'll make. There may be one or two, and then you can make your decisions.
And then you make sure they make the wrong one.
Right, to keep the story going.
So I do a pretty extensive outline also. In fact, it's almost more of a treatment because I include bits of dialogue and bits of direction. And so I kind of know where I'm going. But if for some reason it's not ringing true, I'll set it aside. Let it marinate, because it's going on up
Mhm.
there, and then it'll come back around, and it's like, okay, now I know where we're going.
So it sounds like, I mean, all of you are saying really that your characters have very full lives outside the world of the play, necessarily. I guess as a reflection of being human. That makes sense.
Absolutely.
Interesting. So, yeah, I mean, you all have had to do it. How do you write, with authority for the opposite sex? I mean, there's a way in which we're humans and we share many, many, many attributes, but there are also, clearly differences between individuals. And how do you deal with that? How do you deal with writing for the opposite sex?
I think for
Well,
me, oh, go ahead.
Go ahead,
Sorry.
Paul. Sorry.
Oh, I was gonna say for me, it helps if you're a good listener. If I grew up with a lot of strong women in my family, so listening to my mom, talking to her sisters and her aunts, my aunts, and just listening to them talk and their stories. And I usually can base a female character on someone I actually know, and like, kind of picture what they would say or how they would sound. And also, if you have someone you trust to read what you've written, and ask them, does this sound, true? Does this sound accurate? Am I just, some male fantasy of what I think a woman sounds like? And, if they give you good feedback, it's like, no, this is, not good, or you need to change this, So I think like a lot of just observation, listening, and trying to, bring some truth. And hopefully, like I said, having someone to give you some good feedback and let you know if you're on the right path helps.
Yeah, I was going to say that I too have a lot of strong women in my life, women that I grew up with, and my mother, my sisters, and I just actually published a novelette this last December that was from a female point of view. But I'm working on a project right now that again, one of those ones where I mapped it all out, but I just kind of set it aside. And part of the reason I set it aside is because I had developed it with a woman friend of mine, and she decided that she was going to go on and do something else. She wanted to do artwork and didn't really want to continue with the project. And so I was kind of like without the female perspective. And it's about a young woman who is studying under Julia Morgan, famous architect, at Asilomar, and about the whole founding of Asilomar and the YWCA. And I think it's a very interesting story, but the female perspective and point of view and voice, I just don't feel confident enough right now. And so I posed that to my collaborator, and she said, well, there's a male character in the story that you can just make it from his point of view.
Mm-hmm.
I thought, well, yeah, that's the way to do it, but it just doesn't feel as strong. But yeah, I wrestle with that.
Jeanette, what do you do?
No, I mean, I guess I write the characters that speak to me, but I would concur with everybody here who said, yeah, you observe, you're a good observer in life, and those who have influenced you, either growing up or folks around you. Sometimes it's research, sometimes it's observation. Writing from another person's perspective, I think is different than writing, say, a strong or flawed character, because again, as humans, there are a variety of people out there who are both strong and flawed. So write what you feel in your heart that you want to write. If you are tackling a specific issue, I think it does help to be in the shoes of the person who has experienced that issue. But to prevent writing about a character, putting a character within your play, if that character inspires you, I think you should go ahead and do it. And be prepared for the feedback that might come with it. and listen, being a good listener, absolutely. And that includes in the development process and your audience process. Because I don't think people want to see, oh, well, if I'm writing about the opposite sex, then they must be perfect and good in order for that to resonate because I'm not of that gender. No, everybody can be flawed. And you can also self-examine. Why are you writing what you're writing? I know a lot of people have given flack to several writers for their misogyny in their writing. And so much as there's like almost like a cancellation of their work. And there is a reason why they're writing what they're writing. Do we need to produce all the time? Maybe not. But who am I to say that they should not write what they're going to write?
Interesting.
Yeah, you make a good point, Jeanette. I learned I at UNLV, I was accused of not writing any female characters by an actress there, and she dared me. We had a 10-minute play competition, and I learned a lot from this. She said, "Well, it's a Nick Zagoni play. I'm sure it's just going to be a bunch of guys in it." And I said, "Okay, I'm going to write an all-female 10-minute play, but I want to tell you something. You're not going to like it." And I learned a lot in that play. It became a full-length play, and the characters. It's been produced all over the place. This 3 girls in a car waiting to be fashionably late for a party, and it taught me something that they could take it. Women. I mean, you think that what Jeanette was saying. Oh, I got to write with kid gloves and all this stuff. No. They want it. They want. Women want a good part just as much as a guy. They want a good part, and I just try and write a good part that a female, and any female where I have a character as a female, I just try and make that a great part that that any girl's gonna go, or any woman, and any old lady, whoever is gonna go, I want to play that part. I think it's as easy as that.
Yeah, I agree with that. That's awesome. Yeah, you want to have your characters be full characters, flaws, everything. You don't. Most actors don't want to play someone who's perfect or you put on a pedestal or whatever, male or female. But yeah, I totally agree with that.
Or one dimension.
Yes.
And I think that's where a potential trap could be if there's a particular character. Oh, well, this is the guy in the room. He's going to be a misogynist, or this is the woman in the room, and she's described only in a way that promotes her sexuality. Like, well, what actor would want to play either one of those with just a one dimension? And so that's what I would examine, not only in my own writing, even if the first draft doesn't have that, well, then figure out how to develop, or figure out how to work and change the script. If you're pushing too hard, maybe there's a reason why you're pushing too hard. And then that's where the story or the plot can change. But yeah, I know that play, Nick, and I like that play. That was a lot of fun.
And working with a female actress, I mean, she'll tell you. I mean, I loved female actors because they'll tell you that this is garbage. Women wouldn't do it. I mean, they'll let you know much more than a guy will. That
True.
This part
Very
is
true.
not. This part is not. No, I don't know where you got this lady, but she's no.
So, if you could tell your younger self anything about your life as a writer, what would it be?
Well, for me, it would be start earlier and don't give up so easily. But start earlier.
You don't mean earlier in the morning, do you?
What's that?
Starting at 6.
No, we're not talking about my daytime routine.
Yeah. I have to say, one of the things that I've noticed when people say they ask for advice, or students or something say, what do you do, this and that? It's like when I look backwards, my life makes sense. but when I look at the time, it was all accident. I accidentally got a job at a place. I accidentally met a guy. Somebody accidentally, I like, I did a film and it did well. It was all, it wasn't, I mean, I was working hard and I did my best, but so much of it was just kind of serendipity. I would say patience. The one thing I'm hugely impatient, and I like you can act, you can make an action, you can act, but you can also not act. And by not acting, that's a kind of acting. And so sometimes, like Ken says, you got something that you're writing yourself into a corner, put it down. In 6 months, you are a month or a week, you'll love it. Or, I think that patience is the one thing I wish I had. I probably don't have it now either, but now I'm just tired.
And add persistence to that.
Yeah.
Patience and persistence.
I just want to quickly remind anyone who's watching or, has joined us for the discussion. We will certainly take questions from you. If you're watching via Facebook or on Vimeo, you can just type your question in, and it will magically come to me. All of you have wrestled with publishing, right? Trying to get your work published. What are the traps in that? I mean, the question I thought about asking, or what are the unethical practices in the publishing industry today? But
Well, the ones that I've encountered, because I've done a bit of it now. I think the first couple things I had published were with small presses, and that was about 8 years ago. And then I realized that was not where I wanted to be, because I wasn't attracting a mainstream publisher. So I decided, okay, I'm going to self-publish. And the vanity press is the one that probably is the most unethical that's out there now. The ones that ask you to pay to get your book published, and they say they will help you market and all that sort of thing. The fact is, you're going to do that anyway, so why pay somebody to do it? So I got very experienced at the whole process, and I'm still learning. But I think I put out now 5 or 6 books since deciding to go the self-publishing route, and they've sold all right. They're not bestsellers, but I'm getting my work out there. So I would say it tends to be the vanity presses that you see online that are soliciting manuscripts, and lots of false encouragement, and as many as every time one dies, another one pops up, and you really have to be careful.
One thing that I would say is, groups like Poets and Writers magazine, they just have so many, opportunities. What I find, and this is, like as Ken's saying, there's a kind of a dangerous element out there, or an opportunistic element of people who, a lot of contests, a lot of publishers who want you to pay a fee just to read your material. And it just seems really wrong to me. And I have to say, there are a lot of, they're like play contests, screenplay contests. There's lots of them out there. I noticed there are groups like Dramatists Guild and Playwrights in New York that specifically list opportunities that go out of their way to say, we try to find things that don't have that payment. So I think that those are the kinds of things to be careful of. Although self-publishing is a different deal than it even was, with Amazon. And I have a colleague at the university, and his wife she's written already 3 fantasy novels, and she's done quite well with them. And they're self-published, and they just keep doing really well. So the world is changing, under our feet as we go on. So
I think in film probably more dramatically, because film has become so democratized just by access to equipment. You can shoot a movie on your iPhone now, and everybody's got that. What's your experience, Paul?
Well, I am currently, I've gone the route of traditional distribution. I guess that'd be like kind of the same thing with publication.
Yes.
So, it was great experience as far as like seeing your movie like on Amazon.com or Target.com or on the shelves at Barnes and Noble or something like that, and it's like really awesome, like a huge milestone. But after a while, the novelty kind of wears off, because with film distribution, there is a lot of unethical practices. They'll put on a lot of fees. Like we're going to spend $25,000 on marketing, which they are not,
Right.
definitely not. So that adds to how much money they need to recoup before you start seeing any money from your sales of the Blu-rays or DVDs. So like I've pretty much accepted the fact, like with my first two movies, although they have been distributed by Olive Films, very reputable, film distribution company, and they're in stores and everything, and gave me that opportunity to, have some legitimacy. I've decided to go distribute independently with this next one, Slash Let Party. I am going to sell it myself. And I kind of experimented with self-publication through Amazon.com. You can submit your film to Amazon Prime. And Amazon Prime, that's where the first time I ever saw any money from my films, because people were renting it or buying it, and it was coming directly to me instead of going to a distributor, and then they would split it or not split it with you at all. So it's same thing. And so with Slash Let Party, this is going to be the first time since like 2012 where I'm going to be selling my own copies through my website, because I was doing that before I got the distribution deal. And then kind of seeing the deals that were being sent to me for Slash Let Party, people were really excited about it. They wanted to release it, but it was just more the same, or one offer was even worse than what I normally have. So it kind of turned me off to the distribution, the traditional distribution route. And so we're going to go with this independent distribution. I do have one offer on the table from a very good company, and I'm kind of waiting to see how that plays out. But like I said, self-publishing on Amazon is showing me much more benefits than going through a traditional distributor.
Interesting.
Yeah, I would say that the best things that we can do as artists or as writers is to hustle along with the people who are advocating for you. I would say that the expectations of once you get published for royalties to come back to you are very few and far between. Although I will say the publishing business is really hard. They're putting up a lot in hopes that they will get a return on your work. I will say the majority of my work, and I think Nick can speak to this too, is from a friend who was one of the first to put up a website that housed some of our plays. And that's how the majority of our royalties and offers for productions and international productions came in, which is really astounding. But that keeps me busy more than anything else, more than getting the publisher statement in the mail, which is a little disheartening when it says, oh, this particular 10-minute play that's a part of an anthology royalty statement, and it's zero, So keeping our own databases, being our own advocates. And I think the industry has taken notice, at least for playwrights, to have things like the New Play Exchange, where you're reaching a huge amount of people who could read your work. I would say if there's anything, I don't know what the word was it egregious that the publishing industry is doing? I'm not sure if it's the publishing industry, but there's a couple of little pet peeves. If you're going to produce a play or a reading of a play, please, for the love of Pete, put the playwright's name with the title of the play. We've worked awfully hard to write it. And so it just is a little eye twitch for me when I see, hey, we're going to do this play. And it's like, well, somebody had to write that. And if at all possible, if you're going to play everybody else but the playwright, when you're producing, that kind of makes me scratch my head too. Because there is a lot of blood, sweat, and tears often in the work that we do. And so if other folks in the process are going to get paid, I hope that there will at least be the amount of two ticket prices to pay the playwright royalties for that work. But sure a thrill that the investment again comes sometimes with the theaters to see your work come up onto the stage. There's no question about that, but it often seems like a favor, at least some companies, certainly not Prospect. But some companies do feel like, oh, we're doing a favor to produce your work. And it's like, okay, you know, that makes us feel as writers, at least me, makes me feel kind of like, okay, thanks. And so the value is important.
Well, that was an incredible risk. I want to tell you, for Jeanette and I and a few other playwrights to put a lot of, even our professors, a lot of professional playwrights said, don't put your work on the internet. You just didn't do that. That was an incredible risk back in what, 99, 2000. But what happened was now it's when you pull up 10-minute plays, which all the students do in every university,
Right.
that site is the first one to come up.
Well, and I will say, on the other hand, Nick, you and I have both had plays stolen by younger folks who have claimed it as their own.
Yeah.
And won prizes for our plays,
Yeah.
High school students, which was, once you found that out, was a real hoot. But
it's an incredible
Wow.
risk. It's an incredible risk. But you know how much royalties I've gotten off of publication in a book? Zip.
Yeah.
I can't tell you how much from on doing it online. You know, it's nice to hear that little PayPal go ring, ring, ring every once in a while, you know.
And it really keeps us going for our website fees and our marketing fees, or when we travel, and you know, and so it really, nobody's really going to get rich in being a playwright. You know, even Tony Kushner has spoken about that. So I think that's why there is a one, and I don't know, Arnold and Ken, you may be able to say, I would think people would get at least a living wage by being a staff writer, and maybe insurance benefits from that. But yeah, it's more out of keeping what we love and our passion and continuing the storytelling going and continuing for the next project. And so I can't emphasize enough how the arts are vitally important to continue to do that. It's not a vanity project, it's so that we can share it. And so, yeah, make that collective investment in the people who are telling really great stories and providing that service.
You got to take that risk because the publication companies are, I mean, what Ken, you're self-publishing, and Paul putting that out there on Amazon, that's the way, you know, that guy who wrote The Martian, he self-published that, and you know, he's nobody would touch that. I mean, he sent that to every publishing house over and over. No one touched The Martian. And, you know, look at him now, you know, ha, ha, ha.
Right.
You know, you got to take the risk. And that was a big risk back in 2000. But, you know, that was probably one of the smartest things we did.
And you can always Google search, you know, I mean, the technology right now is so wonderful that you could tell when somebody's doing a production of your play. So
a question from Alicia. What's a favorite theme, subject, or topic to write about that has allowed you to experience a lot of success as a writer? Favorite themes, topics to write about?
For me, the underdog. I love writing about the underdog. So somebody who is an unlikely hero, really based in character, who achieves. And maybe that comes from, I got to be very, very careful here, but I really think that it's like what Sam Shepard did. I have my Valley roots, and I love my Valley roots and respect my Valley roots. And there are some hardworking people in the Valley who have overcome a lot of obstacles. And so to watch that on stage and unfold on stage, I always like that person who achieves beyond and against odds.
Yeah.
So for me, it's taking off on that. It's the hometown. It's Modesto. It's the Valley. Pretty much everything I've written has to do with that theme, with family, with community. So those are the themes that I explore pretty regularly.
For me, I have to say it's more genre in the sense that I really like comedy. And my dream is to write something like the importance of being earnest meets The Odd Couple. Wilde and Simon would be like a perfect dream idea. And so I'm always thinking of kind of comical situations and comic dialogue. So
Yeah. Paul?
The themes that I seem to be coming back to a lot have to do with strong women, definitely. It's not that I don't write roles for men, because I do, but I think I kind of begin into the idea of switching like the gender roles. Like I have a movie called La Soldadera, and it's a love story about two Mexican Americans, and normally it's a thriller love story, and normally it's the guy would try to save the girl. Well, in this one, the girl is saving the guy, and I try to switch that around where with the male character, the main character is the one that's in peril and in danger, and his girlfriend is the one that has to maneuver through all these villains around her and make a deal to get him back. Basically, he's been held hostage. So that's kind of been a theme that's running through my movies, and also like Arnold says, like genre movies. I do like thrillers, horror movies as well, but also just movies that just I guess I'm more attracted to like the more fantastic kind of elements of films. It could be something really small and intimate, like La Soldera, where it's it's like a love story. But I threw in like some drug cartel kind of stuff in there. But it's also stuff that had to do with his brother. Like him, like he's the main character's trying to like watch out for his brother who's like a screw up, and then things like that, like from my personal experience, not that my brother's a screw up, but our like just our dynamic, like how we've always talked to each other and how we've always been with each other, and how we feel about our father and the father in the movie, and so stuff like that. I try to bring personal elements and put them in a genre, like a thriller or something like that.
Yeah. We're kind of turning the corner into like 90 minutes here, which has, I don't know about you guys, it's kind of flown by for me. I'm loving talking to you. Scott is asking, what's next for everybody? What do we have to look forward to from you folks? What's coming up? What's around the corner for you?
Well, I'm working on a couple things. One is a collection of microfiction, short stories about the Central Valley called the Flatland Chronicles. And I'm going to put that out next year. And that's basically been a series of stories that I've been working on for probably 10 or 15 years. Some appeared in Modesto View, some in Stanislaus Magazine. And then Arnold and I are working on a play together about the Maddox Brothers and Rose, who are a rockabilly country act that were here in Modesto for many years, that their influence on country music was far greater than I thought or realized. I mean, I knew about them, but if you watch Ken Burns' documentary on country music, they're on in the first 10 minutes. And so they were a very big influence. So we're working on that.
Fascinating.
See, I've just I finished a play for young audiences on pirates and mermaids and the girl who couldn't swim. So getting ready to get that out there. And I've also, so that's finished and ready to send out. And I've also drafting a kind of a Jane Austen play within a play. So it's a comedy. It's kind of like Noises Off meets Jane Austen. So we'll see how that goes.
Yeah, I have a couple of things that are not quite finished that I'd like to get back to. For whatever reason, I'm kind of fascinated with Bigfoot stories. So this one has a Bigfoot enthusiast in it, and I don't yet know whether or not we're going to see Bigfoot in the play, but I do like the fantastical realism. If I got to choose what I was going to write. But I would say what's on the forefront right now is a project with one of Prospect's very own, Karen Heidelbach, who is in Happy Days. She and I have received a grant to work on a I'm going to call it a reclaiming or an inspiration of Ibsen's Hedda Gabler, but a modern tale. So the main protagonist is a direct descendant, she discovers, of Hedda. And we're going to throw a little climate change in there. And so that should be great fun. And we get to travel to do it. So lots of research related to that one. And it's really fun to work with my friends since I've known since college on that and see where that goes. So very excited.
A literary pilgrimage.
Indeed. Indeed. Duluth, where all the magic happens.
Paul, I know you've got something coming up.
Yeah.
You're getting started on something new.
Yeah. I started the script I was talking about earlier about the 10 pages that I did. It's something that I mentioned I had been outlining for like a half a year or whatever. It's a movie. It's about friendship and trying to achieve your dreams. Working title is Wrestle Babes in the Heavy Metal Demon Massacre. So it's a family adventure movie, I would say. Yep. Combining heavy metal and my love of wrestling, and love of demons as well. So I'll be bringing that to the public soon.
That's good. And Slapperette Party is coming out pretty soon, right?
That will be coming out in February. I sent off the order to get the Blu-rays, and so I'll have the Blu-rays and the VHS tapes and all the other perks that we received from our Indiegogo ready sometime in February, mid-February, I would say.
Can't wait to see it.
Thank you.
You don't make Molly kiss Andrew, do you?
She slapped him in the face. He tried. So yeah, I kept it in. I was like, I like that.
All right, good.
Leave it.
Yeah. Nick, what do you got coming up?
Well, I am on a second draft of a screenplay. Paul liked this. It's called Killer Weed.
Ooh. Tell me more.
It's about a meteor that crashes into a pot farm in Weed, California, and the plants turn into man-eating plants.
Oh, well, let's do this now.
Love it. That's a winner.
Let's do this now. What are we waiting for?
I just, you get the inspiration, the turn, and it's just the great characters. It's sort of like a horror comedic Invasion of the Body Snatchers.
Yes.
Meets Reefer Madness. I totally can see it.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
A little shop of horrors with a weed plant.
That sounds like my jam right there. Love it.
So, I'm completing that, and then I just been like working on like a novel / memoir. I'm kind of venturing away from playwriting a little bit. I think I'm spent, but I got something on there. I always got something on the back burner. But yeah, that's what I'm working on right now.
Yeah.
Cool.
I've got Sarah is asking, how do you think the pandemic has influenced or changed your writing over the last year?
Well, for me, it's given me an opportunity to revisit some things. For example, the very first novel I wrote in 1989. Set it in the drawer, haven't touched it until the pandemic came along. And suddenly I had some time to go back and look at these things.
That's beautiful.
And I went back and looked at that, and it actually held up. I was kind of surprised. And so now I may do something with it. But yeah, it's been an opportunity to go back and revisit some projects. Hasn't really still changed my routine that much, but been able to look at some things again.
Can't write in Starbucks anymore. That's all. I have to say, the thing that I wonder about is like, I'm not particularly interested in writing about, like, say it's 5 years from now and I'm writing a contemporary story. I'm not particularly interested in a story with people with masks. Like I can kind of see myself like leapfrogging over this as though it were just a bad nightmare. like, we had this normal world and then this terrible thing happened and now we're on the other side of it. And I'll be real interested to see how, like, 10 years from now, 20 years from now, when people are writing movies with flashbacks of like, oh, well, now, when you were 10 years old in 2021, and then there's kids at masks at a Christmas party. I mean, I'll be interested to see how it comes back into popular culture and into the, into things. I'm going to try to skirt around it just because I'm tired of it. but I do think it'll be interesting to see how it shows up, even in small ways. Like I said, in just a flashback or in a moment or in somebody's memory or something.
Yeah, I'm really curious too, because I hear a lot of people just, I think everybody thought this was going to be a great time to get so much done. I hear the opposite. Everyone's stymied, just kind of stagnated. And it's true, the first few weeks I got a lot of stuff done, a lot of writing. And then it just kind of reality took over and it seemed like, is this the proper thing to be doing right now?
Right.
There's life hits you and suddenly, things get knocked down in priority. And it's been tough, a lot tougher than I thought. I thought it would be a much more, I'd be a lot more prolific, but not as much as I thought I would. But I've heard that a lot. So I feel like I'm not alone there.
No, yeah. I think a lot of people are facing that. Like for me as a filmmaker, the pandemic, it kind of plays in my mind when I'm writing a wrestling movie and I need crowds of people in the audience and I'm thinking like, maybe I should be writing this right now. Maybe I should stop. Who knows when I'm going to be able to have a crowd of people as extras in a movie. I just don't know if when that's ever going to be feasible to do that. And I'm not used to seeing, I watch Law and Order SVU. So seeing Benson wearing a mask, I'm not really used to that. Benson and Stabler, so wearing masks and stuff. I don't know. So it's a little weird. I don't want to put that in a movie either. I don't want to have my characters wearing masks to commemorate this time. But I mean, I guess if you're being truthful, I guess you kind of have to.
Yeah. And sometimes it's this time has been a time for reflection, time for priority and observation. A lot of it does, pardon the expression, very simply sucks. That's why a lot of it sucks, because you can't have that communal experience. But the imagination and ingenuity for people who are making theater right now is really exciting. And as an educator, not only trying to do it and to convince my students that they're a part of something very special right now, because we're going to be talking about this blip within our theater history, that there is something pretty amazing about it, just as we talked about the plague and then the Renaissance afterwards, and what we can create. So figuring out how to do it, and the majority of folks who have participated in that have been really grateful to have done that experience, even though it's different. But being able to go and actually see a play and in Los Angeles have to, complain about the traffic, how novel, novelty aspect of that, that will be a glorious day. I've also talked to folks about, somebody had an idea to do a play that only included people who hug, or that there was a moment of hugging within the context of the play. And I'm like, I want to be a part of that, I want to be a part of writing something like that. So these themes where actors are able to touch, I think will be really interesting. And would love to see that on stage, because that would be very cathartic, I think, to not only be a part of, but to bear witness to that. So I don't know, maybe it's a little Pollyanna-ish to think about, but this is really an exciting time if we stop and think about it. Even though there are some days where it's just, what's the point? Why write? Which I've had those days too, but that's what makes us human.
I think we're going to have a heck of an audience, because my wife, Catherine, said something interesting the other day. She said, I'm never going to take for granted going to a movie theater again. I'm never going to take for granted going to the theater anymore, that could just be gone. and I don't think anybody ever thought of that before.
Wow.
You know, that, you know, going to a movie. When am I
It'll
gonna
be
not
there.
be able
It'll
to
be
do
there.
that?
Mhm.
Yeah, yeah, and I think people are going to realize how great that is to go to a movie theater or to sit in a dark theater and see a play or a musical, and they're going to realize how that's a wonderful thing. And I think everyone's going to do it.
Yeah. There's gonna be a mad rush for
Yeah.
sure going to the movie theaters. Any live event. Yeah, for
Mhm.
sure.
I hope.
One of the positive things for me has been that we can do things like this. And, you know, you can sit in on a seminar that is being beamed around the world and you're participating that way. But I would much prefer to see people in person. But this is nice to be able to do things like this.
Yeah, I have to say, I do think, like as Paul says, when this is over, September, you know, restaurants, coffee shops, movie theaters, it's going to be packed. I mean, I'm going to see 5 movies a week for, you know, for weeks and weeks at an end. But I also think, as Ken's raising, you know, we've had the invention of a new genre. You know, the Zoom play, the Zoom festival. You know, this is nobody would have done this before. There wasn't any reason to do it.
Zoom
And even
movies.
teaching online was like, oh, it's impossible. Nobody can do this. And it's like, now it is. Here it is. You know. So I think I'll be interested, and I actually hope that Zoom stays as a theatrical outlet for us, because, you know, when I watch, you know, other, you know, watch shows, whether, you know, it's a show from London or something from Australia, and I mean, all of these people are from all over there, from Hong Kong, and it's just great. So I hope that Zoom stays with. I assume that it'll go away because we're all tired of it, and then it'll come back. We'll get nostalgic for it. But I had worked with someone to do a Zoom fest of short plays and about the pandemic and racism, and we got, you know, it was really exciting, and we got some people to watch. And I think as a genre, it's this new thing that exists, and I think that's cool. So if there's a positive, although I met somebody today and they said, well, at least it's not the bubonic plague, and I'm thinking, man, you're setting the bar pretty low.
Folks, we
Never.
really have fully occupied more than 90 minutes now. I think it's going to be. I think it's time to wrap this up. Let me thank you, Paul, Ken, Jeanette, Nick, Arnold. Thank you so much for doing this with us.
No, thank
Pleasure.
you, Jack. Thank you.
Lovely to see you.
Thanks.
You're very welcome.
All the best to you. All
Yes,
the best to
great.
anybody that was watching tonight. I hope you enjoyed the discussion, and know that Prospectus Fine Arts Forum is going to be back, I think, pretty soon with another topic and a new panel, maybe a couple familiar faces. Jeanette, I need to talk to you.
Oh, okay. Well, be well, everybody. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, it's great
Looking
talking to you
forward to
guys.
getting back in the theater soon.
Bye. Thanks, Jack.